That said, again, a very big welcome from my side. My name is Elizabeth Resch, and I work at the UN Global Compact, where I'm leading the Target Gender Equality Initiative globally. But that really means I work with over 50 of our Global Compact local networks all around the world. And I have lots of their faces up here on the screen as well, as they are really the ones localizing the initiative and implementing it on the ground. So while if you join the initiative, you might be seeing me a few times here and there, you'll definitely be seeing your local colleagues a lot more as well. And if you have any additional questions about something that might be done differently at a local context, always feel free to reach out to them throughout the year. During this session, I'll share with you the quick agenda here, because what we'll do is that I'll share a little bit with you about the rationale behind the initiative, but then really focusing on the very practical things of how, when, where does the program take place? And really importantly, what has been achieved so far, as that's always the big questions we get here. Then I'll also introduce you to our colleague Thomas, who participated in the program in Denmark. As we also know, it's great to hear from us in the general perspectives, but it's always the most interesting to see what are companies actually doing and what was their experience like. But then the second half of this session, so really for half an hour, we'll really just take your questions, whatever they might be. So throughout the entire session, feel free to write in the chat or use the Q&A tab that you should see on the top or bottom of your screen, depending on your Zoom setting. So you can just pop them in throughout the whole session, and I promise you we'll answer them. And if there's no time, I'll send you a private email afterwards with our answers to your questions. There's also an FAQ document that can be found on our webpage, and I'll post again the webpage in the chat. So there you can download the brochure and an FAQ document. But as I said, any questions are welcome, regardless of what they might be about, as this session is really meant to introduce the Target Gender Equality Initiative to you and make sure you feel comfortable with all your doubts answered and able to talk to your colleagues about it and able to sign up if that might be of interest. Before I get started here, I know there's always a few in these sessions that are not yet part of the UN Global Compact. And it is definitely a requirement for you to join the UN Global Compact in order to join this initiative. Just really quickly to re-emphasize, the UN Global Compact was created by Kofi Annan in the year 2000 to really build a bridge between the UN and the private sector. And by now, so a bit over 20 years later, it is the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative with over 15,000 companies in over 160 countries being part of it. In order to join, it's a very simple process, and if you go to our webpage, it will all be explained there in a lot of detail. But basically, you would have to review the application guidelines and then work with your CEO to prepare a letter of commitment that commits your company to the 10 principles of the Global Compact around human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption, and then complete the application form. We know for some companies it might take a little longer to join, so always feel free to flag to us, to the Target Gender Equality email, if your application is in progress, just to make sure we can speed it up and we can enable you to take part in the initiative in time. But now the current Secretary General recently said that gender inequality is one of the biggest human rights challenges we face today. So that is really why we are focusing on gender equality, as it is one of the main priorities of the UN overall, and we want to play our part in making sure the private sector lives up to their responsibility as well as the opportunities that gender equality present. So that's how Target Gender Equality came about. And I always love showing this slide, as it shows one of the stats by the World Economic Forum that it will take over 268 years to close the economic gender gap. So of course, a number that means that none of us, nor our children, nor grandchildren, will be seeing a gender equal world. So really just underlining the sense of urgency for us to really double down on our efforts for gender equality right now. I don't want to spend too much time on different stats and background, as I know many of you will be familiar with them, and they just continue to be shocking in terms of the really low numbers of females CEOs in the Fortune 500 or other big company groups. very few board seats worldwide being held by women, very few heads of states or parliamentarians being women, and there's still lots of legal restrictions for women to stay or remain in the labor force. And we also in Target Gender Equality, we take an approach where, of course, we're trying to localize the program as much as possible, as of course there might be different barriers in Sweden compared to Uzbekistan or any other types of regions or countries. The context always really, really matters. That says, in every single country, women continue to face barriers, hindering them from equal opportunities, whether it's violence, sexual harassment, the equal pay gap. And I wanted to draw your attention here to the third stat here on this slide, that 43% of women end up leaving the labor force after having children. That's almost half of women. So really a huge barrier here with regards to creating family supportive workplaces, which is also a big emphasis throughout the program. Here a quick slide on why we are focusing on women's representation and leadership out of all the different topics under gender equality. We really know it is an area that will have trickling effects on other areas of gender equality, but also other sustainable development goals. This, of course, is a picture from a few decades ago, but if we go here, you see a picture from a recent climate conference at the COP, where it doesn't look much different. And we definitely know that in order to fight the climate crisis, we need women's leadership. We need them at the decision-making table in order to make better and more inclusive decisions, as well as to scale up climate solutions by women that are often left behind. So this is another area where often I hear from companies, we can't focus on gender equality, we have to focus on climate. This is our #1 imperative if we focus on sustainability. So there, of course, we always bring out this narrative that in order to fight the climate crisis, you need to also focus on women's leadership. We can't solve one problem by simultaneously creating or deepening another problem, which is the one of inequalities. And throughout the program, you will learn in a lot more depth that gender equality is not only a fundamental human right, but it is essential to drive business performance. There's so many different stats and research out there which shows that higher female representation or more diverse teams lead to better decision-making, better returns, higher profitability, but also better ESG performance overall. So reduced emissions, for example, so reduced incidences of fraud or bribery. So this is something we'll unpack in a lot of depth throughout the program. So that's why Target Gender Equality, to sum it up in a nutshell, really focuses on supporting companies in setting, but then also meeting ambitious targets for women's leadership in order to seize those benefits, but also to just live up to their responsibility of respecting and supporting human rights. This means that we're focusing, of course, at SDG 5 of the Sustainable Development Goals, and they're specifically at Target 5.5, which is around ensuring full participation and leadership in decision-making. Many of you might also be familiar with the Women's Empowerment Principle, which we developed in order to put a gender lens to our 10 principles of the Global Compact, as well as guide businesses in their gender equality work. So Target Gender Equality helps you how to implement the Women's Empowerment Principles, especially in the leadership and workplace dimensions. By now, where are we at? We have over 50 countries that have or are implementing the initiative, with over 2,000 representatives and over 800 companies that participated in the last 2 years. Right now, we are embarking in a new round where everyone again has the chance to sign up to the initiative. So we definitely will be climbing numbers here, and we'll have a lot over 1,000 companies engaged within the time frame of 3 years. On the left here, you see the different countries, and they are also on our webpage. That said, if your country is not listed, meaning your local network is not directly implementing the initiative, you can still contact me, contact the Target Gender Equality at unglobalcompact.org email address, as in some cases we are building regional tracks or broader ways for also other companies to be included where possible. So it's always of interest to companies to know who is participating or who did participate in the last year. And there the short answer is really a mix out of everyone. It's lots of multinational companies, but also lots of SMEs. The majority is bigger national companies, but that says there is space for everyone. It's also a little bit across all levels. We have some companies that have signed the women's empowerment principles already, meaning they have this top commitment to gender equality in place. But then also several that are saying it's a new priority for them. The majority, so over 60% of companies are saying that they have had some activities in place, they have an interest in gender equality, but they definitely need to scale up efforts and be more organized. We also have companies that already have targets for gender equality in place. And there, the majority of them, what they've been telling us is that they have these targets, but maybe they want to make them more ambitious, or maybe they want to include more direct and stronger KPIs when trying to implement or meet those targets. To sign up, as I said before, you have to join the UN Global Compact or already be a member. And then you have to be willing to assign 2 working level representatives, as well as 1 high level ambassador. Here, the working level representatives are the ones that will follow programmatic developments, participate in workshops or different sessions. We're asking for 2, as we know that often a person leaves the company or is sick or out of office. So we want to make sure there's always 1 person who's able to attend, as well as 1 high-level ambassador. And by that we mean somebody that's maybe C-suite or has a direct reporting line to a C-suite member, in order to make sure somebody at highest level is aware of the program from the very beginning, to make it easier for you afterwards to actually take learnings forward. And once you have those people in mind, just go to the webpage that I already posted in the chat and that is already shown here on the slide too, and complete the online registration form. If there's issues, always just feel free to email us or email your local focal point, and we'll make sure to help you. The timeline, and here before I go into depth, I wanted to flag that it really depends a little bit on each country, as of course, main vacation periods are different in different regions, for example, and we want to make sure the program meets everyone's needs. The program was launched in March for this new round. And starting since March, companies can sign up online. So if you want to go to our webpage today and sign up, you can do so. I'm always saying that the deadline ends end of May. I'm saying that because that's when the earliest deadlines end. That said, there's some countries that are extending the deadline to end of June or some even later. But to be sure that you have a spot, please sign up by the end of May. Then countries start with a welcome webinar where you meet your peers as well as the local gender equality team. And we start the performance analysis phase, meaning that companies take the web's gender gap analysis tool, which is an anonymous online tool, in order to assess your performance and help you understand where you're at in order to know where you're going. And then the main chunk of the program, so to say, are 3 capacity building workshops that take around 3 hours each, including preparation material or post material, that really go into depth around target setting. And all activities will be wrapped up by the time of next March, and also preparing you to communicate or leverage the International Women's Day that's coming up next March again. There will be lots of local and global events that will let you showcase your efforts. On the next slide, and as I said before, we will be sharing this over email, so you'll have the chance to digest in more detail. On the right side here, I have the topics listed of the 3 capacity building workshops I mentioned. And on the left, a little bit more of an illustration of how the program is intended to work. So of course, at the individual level, it's going to equip you with learning as well as trainer material to help you train your own workforce afterwards. Then it's about your company, so really your baseline and really assessing your performance through the web's gender gap analysis tool. And then the majority of the workshops and program is taking place together with your local peers, as it's a lot about peer learning and capacity building. But then there will also be global and regional learning opportunities for you. And here the most interesting part, or the part that you usually get the most questions on, is what has happened so far. We are measuring at the middle, at the end, and 1 year after the program of where companies are at. And it's really exciting and encouraging to see that 90% of companies either are drafting a new target or adapting an existing target after the completion of TGE, Target Gender Equality. Over 80% also are building action plans, and the majority of companies is planning to take the WEBS tool on a regular basis to evaluate their performance over time. But we also know that target setting is complicated, which is why it's not mandatory as part of the program to set a target. As we know, it might take longer for some companies depending on your context. I always get asked, so what do targets look like? So I listed a few examples here. For example, from a German company that is telling us when they're developing the target, they're really looking at regional differences to make sure they're able to establish a global target while being a multinational company that takes local contexts into account. A Canadian company that really is saying they're looking at the top management level as that where their permafrost is starting to kick in and where they see little movement when it comes to women's leadership. Or an Ecuadorian company that's saying that they're really looking at IT positions, so women in STEM, as that has been the biggest challenge for them. And they might be setting an overall global target, but then also a specific target for women in IT. Or a South African company that simply listed it as 50-50 2025. 1 year later, that's of course the most interesting part with regards to not only what happens when memory is still fresh, but what do things look like 1 year later? And here we are doing a follow-up survey with all companies 1 year after the program. We see that the majority of companies shared their WEBS tool results with their management, and over half of them have already achieved gender balance at board level and executive levels, or are set to achieve it by 2025. And over 60% have put KPIs in place to track progress. What I always emphasize, though, is that gender equality is not a numbers game. Of course, we might be establishing a target that says something like 50-50 2025, but the main meat is how am I going to achieve those targets and really break down systemic barriers that women continue to face. So that's really where the action plans come in that we help you develop. And we see a variety of different issues that are taken on there. By now, we have collected actually close to 1,000 actions that companies that participated in the program are planning to take. And in the follow-up, over 200 have been reported to us to have been completed. So those range from childcare facilities to hiring practices to inclusive language and so on. In the majority of companies, it's really the human resources or sustainability teams that are responsible for this area. And there's lots of companies too, around a quarter, that have created working groups in order to take these issues forward. So that's really for you to preempt the question of who should I assign. It's basically a mix out of people from human resources, sustainability teams, sometimes strategy teams if they exist, or communications representatives. And it's great to see that 1 year later, close to all the companies said that they benefited from the program. And many of them also communicated that they gained a lot more confidence to talk about this issue with their colleagues. And lastly, I have put 2 quotes here from past participants, one from Rachel from Kenya, who really said that it opened her eyes to really seeing how broad the gender equality agenda is, and how deep you have to dig, so to say, in order to break down systemic barriers. Or from Gagandeep from India, who said that through the program, she really managed to have gender balance across her company, especially in the STEM areas, so women in technology, science, and so on, where we know it's a lot harder in order to meet different targets. And encouragingly, the majority of companies and participants are recommending the program. So of course, exciting for us to see. That said, I wanted to pass it over to another colleague, Thomas from Denmark, who participated in the program last year in Denmark. I put a picture from his website here up as well for you to really see a little bit of the many things that the company does. As I also wanted to emphasize, we have lots of companies in traditionally male-dominated industries represented in Target Gender Equality, which is really encouraging to us, as of course this is an area where it might be even trickier to advance gender equality issues and in order to meet different targets. But that said, I'll pass it over to Thomas for you to directly tell us a little bit more about what you're doing, what your experience in the program was, and what you're planning on doing going forward.
Sounds good. Thank you, Elizabeth. I don't know if my video will work, but let's see. Hello, everyone, and thank you for listening in. I'm very happy to actually been given the opportunity to talk to you all. I'm just trying to see if the video will work. Otherwise, I'll just have to speak. I don't know, Elizabeth, if you can do anything. First of all, I
don't see you, but we'll try.
Okay. First of all, I want to give a really a good feedback to Elizabeth for going through an immense, or let's say, a very huge amount of information to all of you guys in a very brief time. And should you not be able to capture it all, I'm sure Elizabeth will be helpful afterwards. And the same, you can also reach out to me because I've been through basically the program, so it's fine. First of all, you can see on the picture there's what we call a substation, and that's used for transferring energy from offshore to onshore, and that's what we do in our company, Simca Maritime. So we have a lot of engineers and a lot of technicians. So you can imagine, our workforce is around 85% men and 15% female. And secondly, so that's a challenge, and the industry which we are in, it's very much a male-driven industry still. So that's also another challenge that we are into to work with. And I will give you a few other argumentations and motivations why we have chosen to actually be part of the program. But you should also know that we are headquartered out of Denmark in Esbjerg, very close to the sea. Obviously, since we're working with offshore, we are 1,800 employees. We work globally. We are at 5, I would say, locations. It's Singapore, it's Norway, UK, Denmark, and then Germany. And then we're moving into Asia and also US. When I joined the company was back in 2020. We were around 1,400. Now we are 18, and we are moving towards the 2,000. I would imagine after a few months probably. So I will give you a few of the motivations why we chose actually to join this program. Besides what I've already mentioned, I'm also in an organization, and you can look at my picture. I'm sorry for not sharing my video, but I'm a male in my 40s. I'm part of the senior management team. I have responsible for HR, sustainability, marketing, commercial excellence, HSE. And I'm sitting in a management team where we are all male. We also have a board of directors, and we are also only men in that area. And mostly this is due to the pipeline that's been there, but it's also due to not having worked directly with the diversity agenda. And this is one of the reasons why we also joined this, to understand what kind of tools can we grasp to understand how we can move. So when I first joined in back in 2020, we had around 16% females in our leadership positions. At the end of last year, we were around 19%, and I just looked this morning, and we are at 25%. We have a target that is around 40% by 2030. It's 35% by 2024. So we have, even though we have increased by 5 index points, we have another 10 index points to go by end of next year. And having been part of this program, what we learned, at least from my experience, is also that we are at a beginner level. Maybe we think that we have been doing a lot, and I think Elizabeth mentioned a lot of good things that you can do, making mentorship, making equal pay, making sure that you also look into the position and you promote with equal opportunities. We also overlooked a lot of the things that we actually got, and I could see one of the questions from the chat was, what examples can you share that was there any knowledge sharing in the program? We got a lot of knowledge sharing throughout the program, and also learned in our whole recruitment process that our language, when we put up job ads, even when we have our internal job descriptions, they are not really neutral, and we've been working with that part. We have also taken out pictures, gender, age, A lot of these things from our recruitment process to ensure that we have a much more neutral approach to our recruit. The latest example, what we're actually kicking off tomorrow, would be that we have a female advisory board. And now I'm checking very much in on the female, on the gender part, where we have allocated and nominated and very motivated, engaged workforce of 12 female, both specialists and leaders, who are to provide advice to me and my HR team on the initiatives that we're doing. So it's basically whenever we have new initiatives or updating our processes, then we take a review with this advisory board to understand if they actually can help us see other elements that we have not seen or not really fully taken advantage of when it comes to the gender possibilities. Besides that, what we're doing on a more actionable level to ensure that the top management, where I'm also part of it, is taking ownership, is that we are also made a dashboard where we're basically looking at all the time how does it look when we look at our pipeline of female in our organization, in order to see how fast do we move them, how many do we take in. And if I was to give you another example of why we're so focused on it, this whole agenda, it's also because when Elizabeth showed you the first slides, we know for a fact that diversity actually is equal better and stronger performance. And to get that, basically that change management into an organization that has been very, let's say, conservative, which we have been in our past, and also looking at that diversity was more for us was between functionalities, qualification, skills, age, different educational background, and so forth. And now we're also taking the gender element into it. And for me, that has definitely also been very good to have this network that you're potentially going into, because you will get tools, you will get also KPIs, you will get a good, Elizabeth talked about the web tool, which is basically a very good way of assessing yourself and understanding where you are on the ladder for being immature to being a mature gender diversity, let's say, organization that looks equally at all the opportunities. We are also getting a lot of challenges from our organization if we can do more. Whenever we have an open position, we challenge ourselves. We do not use quotes as of now. We have been discussing that a lot, but that's also where you can utilize the network of the TG. In my view, this has been it works for some, and for us, it's also about something where your culture and which direction you're heading. For sure, I think what you also would get being part of this is that in my experience, I was a bit, I don't know if I was fortunate or not, but I was on the team that I participated in. We were 20, and I was the only man. And that came with some good discussion and also some laughs. But you also should know that I'm the lucky father of 3 girls. And of course, that also is very deep to my heart. I also have a very personal ambition to do something that could be easier for them to actually get to go to the C-level in organizations, should they want to do that. I think these are some of the examples that we've done. I think throughout the program, you will actually get not only the tools, but you also get an open insight to how a lot of other organizations are working with that. And I can see that we have basically people joining in from all over the world. And in my view, this is also the strength of the program, that we actually get like the small cultural differences, because we are maybe a bit more mature in the part of the world that I am in currently than some parts of the world that our organization is in, and where this is not an option right now to let's say not focus in on it, because we need it also in our organization to be able to both move people around, but also to create the equal opportunities. I was given, I don't know, Elizabeth, let me know if I can talk a little bit more. I don't have the timing of.
Feel free to take other 2 minutes if you like.
2 more minutes, okay, perfect. I would also like to just give this is still, I think we were one of the first teams, at least out of this part of the region that was joining in. So we got a lot of learnings also how to work with, let's say, even though it's a pretty sharp and tight program, there's also lots of opportunities to provide input and actually get some good examples. I can see that also some of you are looking at practical, actionable tools to do it. In my view, there are a lot of opportunities. Some of them will also require that you look into the legal part of it. Other elements are such as the hybrid workplace. How do you set up, like, basically how you measure, for instance, a simple thing like illness, whether or not you take the first day or the second day as illness, or you basically take that as an opportunity to provide a stronger, let's say, foothold for the family to be a family, because it's usually, sorry to say, but it's still, at least often that we see, it's the woman who actually takes the first day home if the child is sick. So there's a lot of small tips and tricks that we can do also to make it easier, based on the way that we actually measure our performance in the organizations. But for me, at least, I would encourage all of you to join in. It's been a huge learning experience for me, and we've also helped us setting, let's say, progress targets, so we know how we can get to the 40%, which is our target in 2030. Because this is about a lot of small initiatives that need to be done at the same time, where you actually work with the change management process. And this is where I think I've had a good sparring partner to go back to my management team and talk about why this is a movement that we need to understand better, and everyone needs to do something every day. And it's the small steps that matters, right? So I think that was all for me, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Thomas. That was definitely really insightful. And of course, from our side, great to hear that the program was so useful to you. And I think there was lots of practical aspects you brought out. A few things I'd just like to re-emphasize is I really like that you said in the beginning, you were thinking you were doing a lot, but then you realized there's a lot more to do, a lot longer way to go, which is definitely something we're seeing a lot of companies talking at events about this policy here or this practice there, but there's few organizations that truly have organization-wide strategies backed up by measurable goals and targets. So this very first step of recognizing I'm interested in this topic, but there's a lot more we should be doing, is definitely this very foundation of where we hope, or what we hope companies or representatives realize going through this program. And then also what you were saying around the business case. So not only understanding the business case is important, but what or why does it matter to me and my company specifically out of all the different organizations out there, as this is really what's going to make the difference when talking to management teams or boards or other types of bodies. And of course, congratulations for setting this ambitious target of 40% by 2030. As of course, in your type of industry, we just know it is definitely something that's going to be tricky to achieve, but it seems like you've already put lots of the right pillars in place. So definitely looking forward to following your journey. And here in the chat, I know there's also lots of acknowledgement to you. And feel free to jump in writing in some of the questions here, as I'll start taking some of the questions here right now. I guess one of the first parts to say is that luckily the majority of you who would be joining the program now, we have been doing the program for 2 years, meaning by now we really have a huge database of case studies, of examples, of ways that worked for different types of companies. So just to underline, the whole program is backed up by different good practices and case studies, and they're just growing from year to year in different industries, in different countries. as of course, Thomas might be able to give you some examples that work for you, but in the end, it will depend on each company's context and history and ambitions. So I'll start taking some questions. The very first one here was if this is going to be recorded. So I'll just re-emphasize again that it is recorded and you will be receiving the slides as well as the recording afterwards. And if there's any more questions, always feel free to email me afterwards. So feel free to start putting them in the chat and Q&A tab. I'll go through some of them here on the slide, which I already see the majority of them popped up in the chat already too, which is if it costs money to join Target Gender Equality, if there's a fee. Just to say there is only a fee in a very, very small number of countries, 3 countries or so out of the 50, and there is a very small nominal fee. In the majority of countries, it is free to join if you're a member of the UN Global Compact. To re-emphasize again, it is relevant for SMEs and MNCs alike. In the different groups, we try to break it down and make sure it's there's different breakout sessions relevant for you, different optional engagement sessions relevant for your company's size as well. But in general, the program is really developed and styled in a way that it is relevant regarding of your size. I saw a question in the Q&A tab here around what is the difference with the women's empowerment principles and the work of UN Women. Here to say the Women's Empowerment Principles are a set of 7 principles we developed as the UN Global Compact together with UN Women a bit over 10 years ago, which are a commitment by the CEO to publicly signal your commitment to gender equality. So it's principles that you sign. But that's of course just the first step. Then it's about operationalizing, implementing those principles. So Target Gender Equality helps you to do so, to really help you see, now that I have this commitment in place, how do I actually implement? As in, what type of actions am I going to take? Which type of KPIs am I going to put in place? It is not mandatory for any companies to sign the Women's Empowerment Principles in order to participate in TGE, but we are encouraging you to do so, as of course, having a public commitment in place is always a great first step. So throughout the program, we'll tell you how it works in practice. Also, it is not mandatory to publicly share a specific target after the program. We really encourage everyone to do so, as we're all about transparency, and also hearing specific targets, also like Thomas just said, of course, helps other companies to follow suit afterwards. But we know it takes time and it is really different for every type of company, so it's not mandatory. The web's gender gap analysis tool that helps you assess your performance is completely confidential and anonymous, meaning only you will be able to see your company's specific results. Together as a group, we're only looking at anonymous aggregate data in order to analyze different trends that we can share with you, but it's anonymous for you. And as registration deadline, I'm always saying end of May, as that's when the first countries start closing their deadline. But that said, in some countries, it is open for a little bit longer as well. I'll now go through a few more questions here. If the course can be done as a person and not a company, unfortunately not. Of course, it is a little bit combined with lots of individual learning opportunities for you. But you really have to be an organization that's already a part of the Global Compact or about to join the Global Compact in order to participate in this program. As an individual person, there might be other offerings that the Global Compact has, for example, a public e-learning course on gender equality that might be of interest to you that I can share with you afterwards. But this program is open to companies. I also see that the company has already registered but hasn't received any communication yet. And there, just to answer your question, Gabriela, your country focal point will be in touch with you in the next weeks. The process depends a little bit on the country. In some, you'll get recognition and acceptance right away. In others, there's so many applications that we're waiting a little bit to see how many applications come in and then confirm a certain amount of applications. So that's why we really encourage you to apply as soon as possible. If you have doubts about your application and if it has been received at all, feel free to shoot me an email. I can double check for you afterwards. Then I have a bunch of other questions here, so I'll start going through them one by one. Here we go. A company interested in the impact side of things, is there potential to collaborate to share what has worked well and what's been impactful in terms of working towards targets? And yes, that's 100% what the program is about. In the very first workshop, we'll start sharing what does ambitious look like, how do I set the target, followed by how do I develop a strategy to meet my target, which KPIs do I put in place. And in every workshop, there is opportunity for peer learning, for sharing, for discussion of case studies, for presentations. And on top of that, you will be accessing an academy platform, meaning our interactive learning platform, where you will have access to lots of videos, case studies, and policy templates, and so on, to see what has worked for other companies and what have they been doing in order to help you inform your targets as well. A question on if you can sign up directly or if you need to go through your local office. You can sign up directly on the global webpage, where we have the application forms linked in a variety of languages. And then we will be in touch with you to confirm your application in due course. So there's no need to ahead of time confirm with your local office. Only if you have specific questions to them, feel free to contact them, but it's not a must. What else do we have here? In order to meet the gender balance in the companies without increasing headcount, how can this be done? Do I have to lay off male employees? So that's one big part. That's actually part of the first workshop, really unpacking these common fears or common arguments, as this is, of course, what we hear a lot in terms of, I can't focus on gender equality because it means I have to lay off male employees, or male employees are going to get upset because they're going to miss out on a promotion. That's why we're always saying it takes time, as of course for a growing or not so fast growing company, you won't just lay off other employees in order to hire women. It's not about that. It's really about creating an inclusive workforce where also the women that might already be there feel empowered to speak up and have equal decision-making power, as well as putting the right practices in place. So for example, when hiring, make sure that if you're working with recruiters, that you have a requirement to them to bring you gender balanced candidates, or to ensure that the top 3 candidates, there has to be a woman included, as well as having, for example, gender balanced hiring committees, to ensure that even though you don't have a strict criteria in place for it has to be a woman as the final candidate, you have a more inclusive decision-making process that over time will lead you to a more gender balanced company. Here another colleague, Karima, that's asking if 3 representatives can attend, or can they take turns in order to participate. So of course, that's great that you already have a big team that's interested in joining. And there, to re-emphasize, our requirement of having 2 representatives and 1 ambassador is because we know that this is something that has been working well in the past, and is something that really enables companies to participate throughout the year without too much interruption. That said, if you have more people that want to join, networks and our colleagues leading the workshops always are happy to make exceptions for you to include an additional colleague in the workshop. In the end, it depends a little bit on the group. For example, here in Spain, I think you said you're from Spain, we always have a very large group of companies joining this program, meaning usually it's okay if there's 3 representatives from 1 company. In smaller groups, we might be a little bit stricter, as we don't want 1 company to dominate the discussion too much. But that said, our end goal is always to make a difference for gender equality. If you think having that additional person in the workshop will help you with your learnings and with your implementation, we're definitely happy to work with you to make that happen. Can an NGO register with the Global Compact? Yes, the Global Compact is a multi-stakeholder initiative, meaning that also non-business organizations can become a member of the Global Compact. On the webpage, you'll find the application material for that. This program, Target Gender Equality, is primarily targeting businesses, meaning the online application form is only open to businesses. That said, some of our countries have been making exceptions to also include some, for example, private universities or bigger NGOs that are also able or open to setting targets and making a difference in terms of women's leadership in their organization to join the program. So there, please feel free to send us a message and we'll figure it out together with a local team in order to make an exception for you to join the program. But the main point is we're not going to alter the program too much, but we'll rather work with you to see if the program might be relevant for you or not. Here I have a question in the Q&A tab. I have a new company. How can I register and promote Target Gender Equality? Yeah, it definitely doesn't matter if you're a new company or long existing. We actually think the newer the company, the better in terms of already from the beginning putting the right structures in place as you grow. So there, definitely just go to our webpage and I'll send you the links afterwards, and you can apply to become a member of the Global Compact and already apply to be part of Target Gender Equality as well. A bunch of questions here. A question from Haiti, who's not a country listed of running the program. And there, as I said in the beginning, we have only specific countries listed as that's where the Global Compact local networks are implementing the program. That said, we do have some countries where we don't have networks and so on. And now and again, we try to make exceptions for companies from other countries to pair up in different regional tracks and so on. So definitely feel free to email me afterwards with a bit more detail about your company, and we'll try to find the best fit for you. As our end goal, as I said before, is to try to enable behavior change across companies and not be too strict about our criteria, and find solutions for everyone that's willing to learn and willing to take action. A question from Brittany, who seems to be from a multinational company that operates in 60 countries. Should we only list our HQ country? Yeah, that's also a great question, as we have some companies that have not only participated in the country of headquarters, but also decided on a few other priority countries, sometimes one country per region, where they also enrolled in Target Gender Equality simultaneously. And that will afterwards discuss within that small group, small committee, to see how can we develop plans that are locally informed by these different regions. The main point here is that you're automatically part of the Global Compact and your local network in your country of headquarters. But in other countries, you might have to officially join your local network in order to join this initiative. So there, the easiest thing is if you register as your headquarter country and then shoot us an email saying, these are the other 5 or so countries I'm interested in, and I'll connect you to our country leads in order to see what the requirements are and in order to make it happen. But in general, there's definitely several multinational companies that have done this in the past, participating in a variety of countries. A question around if this initiative also focuses on LGBTQ women. Yes, so in general, the best answer here is that a lot of the learnings in the program could be equally applied to other marginalized groups, as it's really about creating inclusive workplaces and putting the right structures in place. So some of these might then be also, there's some companies that, for example, set a target for gender equality while simultaneously setting a target for people or women with disabilities. So there's definitely learnings that will help you also apply them to other different groups that you'd like to focus on. And in some countries that they've developed a specific additional focus on other different diversity groups as well. Could we have a database of all companies around the world to set up indicators? So that's something that we're hoping to do going forward in a lot more depth through the communication of progress, which is something that each company has to submit when joining the Global Compact, to share a little bit of information with us on an annual basis. So through that, hopefully in the next couple of years, we will be able to establish more of a database and tracking of how the trends really develop over the years, as we do know that real progress takes time. A few more companies here, questions here. I registered, but not sure if my company has been accepted. So for that, please, when I send the final email after this webinar with the recording, with the slides, always just feel free to send a quick follow-up email to me, double checking on some of these individual questions, such as if you're registered or not. So I'll double check for you in the backend on our system. how Target Gender Equality works with the Global Compact. So in general, the UN Global Compact is an initiative by the Secretary General of the UN, meaning it's really committing your company to sustainability principle. It's when you join the Global Compact, you're part of this initiative and you're not obligated to do one thing or the other or participate in a specific program. But as the Global Compact, we developed a set of core initiatives that will really help you to learn and keep learning and advance the sustainability practices. And Target Gender Equality is one of them. So when you're joining the Global Compact, it's not mandatory to join Target Gender Equality, but if you'd like to get serious about gender equality, it's really the core initiative we encourage you to join. If a company operates in a remote way from all over the world, would it be a problem to join from different countries? No, that's a similar question that I answered before. You can definitely join in a few different countries, or you can join in your headquarter countries, but having representatives from other countries join. As in, there's no requirement that your two representatives and your ambassador need to be from the same country or based in the same country. The program is really run remotely given the current situations. So it has no restrictions there. Of course, it might depend a little bit on time zones, as the main time zone is also always chosen by wherever the program is taking place. Can the ambassador also join the workshops or only the representatives? Yes, there's definitely some really engaged ambassadors we had over the past 2 years that also joined workshops. They're always welcome to, but there's no must. So definitely they're welcome to join the workshops if they like. I'm just browsing through, there's lots of questions here. Is there exclusive mention of inclusion? So we're definitely talking about a few different concepts throughout the workshops about gender equality, about diversity, inclusion, and in the workshops we'll really unpack what do these concepts actually mean and how do they interlink with each other to also help you become more confident in using this language with your teams, with your leadership. Is there only one person, or how does it work if there's only one person available to participate? As I said before, our standard criteria is these two representatives with one ambassador, but we know there's some companies that are really, really small that might not have that many people. So we're definitely always happy to make some exceptions for SMEs to, for example, only send one instead of 2 representatives. That's okay as well. And we can also make exceptions for 3 representatives in the countries where we have somewhat bigger groups. So we can definitely make that happen. Do you provide insight or data on gender diversity strategies for specific types of roles or fields, women in STEM, revenue generating roles? So in general, throughout the workshops, we do have a huge variety of industries and sectors and sciences engaged, as I said before, which is why it's always a little bit broader, so to say. But that said, we have by now developed so many case studies, examples, and so on, specifically for different roles. For example, for women in STEM, definitely we have lots of good practice material around that. Or also, for example, how to tie compensation to different diversity or gender equality targets for leadership roles, or a variety of different pieces there. And wherever possible, we try to organize sessions specifically for SMEs, specifically for MNCs, specifically for male-dominated industries, for example, to help you dig a little bit deeper into some of those areas. I think I actually answered all the questions that are here, and we're close to time. So that's why I just wanted to wrap it up in the next 2 minutes and re-emphasize that I will be sending to you via email the recording, the slides, answers to some of the top questions, different links, as well as the links to the women's empowerment principles that was just asked about in the chat. And then you can always reply to me via email with any additional questions, and I'll make sure to get back to you. Any type of questions are welcome. We also have an FAQ document on the webpage that I'll also send to you. And here I'll just share with you 2 more slides here. One is a question that actually didn't come up now, but usually comes up around the time commitment. So we have that listed here about what we expect or estimate for people to spend on the program. So you'll also have that in your slide deck via email afterwards. as well as, again, the map of different countries where this year the program is being implemented. And then lastly, again here, the email address targetgenderequality@unglobalcompact.org also reaches me, meaning I'll individually reply to your different questions regardless of what they might be. But you also can sign up directly already on the Target Gender Equality webpage. That's part of the unglobalcompact.org webpage. So huge thanks for all of your questions and for taking the time. And I'm really looking forward to hopefully seeing many of you throughout this program in the next year. And I really look forward to working with you and jointly moving the needle for gender equality. And thank you, Thomas, for joining us and sharing your great reflections and learnings and plans ahead with all of us as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.